Okay, all right, we're ready to roll here, folks, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Albany City Council meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. Would you like to join us in the Pledge Allegiance to the flag? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Mary, could we get a roll call, please?
Sykes.
Here.
Coburn.
Here.
Olson.
Here.
Bessie Johnson.
Here.
Alex Johnson.
Here.
Kellum.
Here.
Okay, all right, thank you. And first then on the agenda is going to be business from the public this evening. Is there anyone here that would like to bring an item forward? Yeah, Tom? Jim, I'm sorry. Hogan, got the last name. Yeah.
Well, I am Jim Hogan, and I am the chairman of the Albany Public Library Foundation Board. And I know there has been discussion concerning the fiscal difficulties of the city and discussion of closing the Carnegie Library. And I wanted to bring up some items that I think some of them you've heard before, some of them maybe not. We are obviously much in favor of keeping the Carnegie open for various reasons. Historical reasons, first of all. It's been there for over 100 years, serving the public, and we would like that to continue. It's also part of what I think has contributed to the downtown restoration. I remember downtown in the 80s, and it didn't look anything like it does today. And that's, I think the Carnegie has contributed to that. So we are a foundation that controls $1.1 million at the moment, as of the end of the last fiscal year. We spend usually $30,000 to $50,000 on the Carnegie and the whole library system each year. That varies from year to year. For instance, last year we had some large physical contributions to the Carnegie, like window restoration. We got all the windows to work. They were falling into disrepair. Bought a new heat pump for the building, a whole new heat system. The boiler no longer, well, it supplements, but the heat pump is the main heat system and cooling system now. And because of those big items, we spent $71,000 on the Carnegie last year. And lastly, I think you should know what our bylaws say about what would happen to the foundation if the Carnegie is closed. The foundation's bylaws states that we have two purposes, and first and major purpose is to keep up the Carnegie Library. And I will read to you the paragraph about what our bylaws say are our duties. The Albany Public Library Foundation's primary purpose shall be to benefit, support, and improve the downtown or Carnegie branch of the Albany Public Library. Such benefit, support, and improvement shall include, but not be limited to, providing funds for building maintenance or improvement in line with the historic nature of the building, for fixtures in the building, for books and materials, for personnel, for programs at the downtown Carnegie branch of the library. But we also have a secondary purpose, excuse me. The foundation's secondary purpose is to benefit and support the other branches of the Albany Public Library of the city of Albany. So if the Carnegie were to close, the Albany Public Library Foundation would not go away. We would still be supporting the main branch of the library, what would be left of the library system. However, we would not be contributing to the upkeep of the building. And we've spent a lot of money on the upkeep of the building, and I think that's contributed a great deal to the city. Any questions?
Yes, I do.
Rich?
There wasn't anybody talking about doing away with the library, the building. They were talking about repurposing it. Is there, and I guess you may or may not know, and I recognize that off the top of your head, if a piece of the place were, for example, one wing of it or something were used for, to bring in economic development people, or to bring in AVA, ADA, something else, to defer costs, would the foundation still be able to help the rest of the building?
So you're talking about closing or repurposing part of the building and keeping the rest of it?
And I don't have any plan in mind. I'm just,
Yeah.
thinking of possibilities. It was never anybody's intent to do away with the building.
No, I
Or change
understand
the
that.
building. It was just, gee, we got a gun to our head.
Yep.
Let's find some ways of saving money, and maybe, because something like this, you could put something else in there and not have to pay them for space and get them to pay you for space, which is a double whammy. But can you give me any idea there?
My only idea is that I go back to what our bylaws say, and it says for the purpose, the benefit, support, and improvement of the downtown or Carnegie branch of the library.
Yeah. So,
If the building is used for other purposes, I think our purpose has disappeared.
well, if it was your purpose and another purpose, what I was talking about.
Yeah. I can't give you a
Can't-
definitive
okay.
answer to that.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay. Any other
questions?
questions?
Well, thank you so much, Jim. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate to the foundation and all their hard work over the years, and in supporting that beautiful building.
Yes,
So,
it is a beautiful
yeah,
building.
We are very fortunate to have
Thank
a
you.
Carnegie Library too, so thank you. Anyone else from business from the public? Okay. Chief Wooten, were you wanting to come forward, or did I remember someone or staff asking me that?
Well, I tell you what, if you'd like, I could come up during staff reports, or would you like me to come up now?
You can right now.
Okay,
Yep.
all right.
Chief, we can see how you're dressed from here.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Give a
With
guy
the promotion,
promotion,
you
it
guys
doesn't
were-
change anything, we know you.
With the promotion came a quick trip to Macy's
Oh.
and a new wardrobe. I'll still wear the uniform, but we'll mix it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm actually here for two reasons. One is later on in the agenda I'll get to if it's okay. But first, I'd just like to formally introduce myself as the Fire Chief of Albany Fire Department, and to thank Peter for the opportunity to lead what I believe is probably the best fire department that I've ever been a part of. Since I've been promoted, multiple people have reached out to me and told me what a great organization Albany Fire Department is, and the city of Albany as its canopy parent, if you will. So a little bit about myself. I've worked for the fire department, Albany Fire Department, for 27 years. I was hired October 1st, 1992, and subsequently, ironically, promoted to chief October 1st of this year. So 27 years to the date.
That's great.
I graduated from Oregon State, so if any of you are Go Beavs, I am all Go Beavs.
Yep. you
I also,
I see green in that tie.
I know there's green there's green, it is Oregon after all, so I do have to have a little bit of green. I also was a part of the State of Oregon incident management teams as a planned section chief. It's where we would go out into the state when a large event happened and a community was down and out, we would go in and stand the community back up. We would take over potentially fire protection for the geographic area, and we would mitigate whatever hazards were out there. I just resigned actually today from that. The time demands in the summer were too great to do that and be fire chief of Albany Fire. I'm married to my wife Paige. We've been married for 25 years. We have 3 children, ranging from 22 to 17. She's a first grade teacher at Clover Ridge here in town. We've lived in town for the last 25 years, so Albany is our home. It's where we raised our children and where we love to be. So a little bit kind of about our department and how I intend on leading it. First off, our mission is to prevent and protect from harm. That's not going to change. The core reason why we are here and why 90+ people show up to work is to protect the citizens of Albany. We're going to continue to do that. But I just want to spend a minute to let you know of some of the values that I intend on living by, leading by throughout and hopefully will spread throughout the entire department, which, let me rephrase that, is already throughout the department. I just need to continue to lead that way. First off, our department will continue to have a service-minded approach to what we do. Because at the end of the day, to protect from harm, that is what we're doing. We're providing a service. Also that we'll have integrity. That in our line of work, you can't write policies for every situation that people are going to come across. But what you can do is you can coach your people that so long as you do the right thing for the department, the citizen, the community, that's going to be the right decision at the end of the day. And lastly, professionalism is another value that our department has, and I'll continue to try to enforce. Regardless of the incident, I have 100% confidence that anybody in our department is going to perform the task at hand that they need to do to make a difference in somebody's life. Chief Bradner has spent the last few years giving awards to different people from our department doing that exact thing. So our professionalism I put up against any other firefighter in the state. So kind of tying this up a little bit, I'd like to also just thank the council for all the support you've given the fire department over the last, I don't know how many years. I know even some of you have been on the council for a while, some are newer. It really hasn't changed the fundamentals of things. This council has always been supportive of the Albany Fire Department, and for that I'm extremely grateful. So, do you have any questions for me, or I could answer for the fire department?
I do.
Please.
Do you have an orange and black tie, please?
I do have an
Oh,
orange
okay.
tie.
Just making
Yes.
sure.
Yep, absolutely.
Any questions? Or?
I guess the only comment I have is later on, we're going to be looking at some reclassification,
Yeah.
and I just appreciate the efforts, and the police department done the same thing with the budget constraints, looking at what we can do and what we can't do, and continue to be innovative in ways to make the dollar go a little further, so.
Well, I'm excited to come back up and tell you about that, because I think that's a win-win situation.
Sure.
Okay, thank you for your time.
All right.
Congratulations, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Okay, that's it from business from the public. And next is adoption of resolutions. And first, Seth, I see you got a slide up there, so you might want to say a few words.
I do. Thank you, Mayor and councilors. I'll just say a brief introduction. We actually have Bryce Winnie and Doug Puerta from Stack Hip here. The purpose of this item on the agenda tonight was not only for you to consider and hopefully approve a resolution to finalize financing that was committed to Stack Hip earlier this spring, but also give them a chance to give you a quick update on their construction process and how the business case for their company is coming along and supporting the special metals industry here. I'll stay here while I invite them up if you have substantive questions about the nature of the contract. I'm happy to answer those. Sean and I work closely on that along with their financing team, and happy to answer questions should they exist. Seem good?
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Any questions of Seth? Do you have? Okay. Do you have any questions of from the representatives from STAC? Any
Well,
questions of
they
them?
haven't spoken yet.
Oh, they're going to do a presentation. Okay.
Good evening. Hopefully we can give you something to ask questions about. So first of all, a quick thank you. I was asking Seth when I was here last, and I thought it was in June or May, but he informed me it was in February. So it kind of holds true the adage that time flies.
Yeah.
Not to jump ahead or anything, but the partnership, again, I want to thank everyone we've worked with here in the city, including yourselves, Seth, John Pasconi, Chris Hansen, Girding Builders. As you can see from our picture there, we've come a long way since February. I don't think we have a picture of the February stats, but it was a big muddy hole in the ground. So seeing what it is today is very rewarding. What's happening on Marion Street? Well, it's pretty exciting if you drive down Marion Street from, I believe, the north. Eventually, you kind of clear the trees and you see this massive building kind of peeking over at you. It's again, the picture doesn't really do it diligence. It's a really massive project, but it's right on schedule. I'm really delighted with how we've come along. In terms of our business update, the reception we've gotten, not only locally, but across the United States has been outstanding. As I think I mentioned last time I was here, this is not just in support of Albany, it's in support of the metals industry in the United States. So our priority is to support the local companies, ATI, Selmet, Tie Squared. There's been some consolidation, but there are local partners, and we're going to take good care of them. But we've had inquiries coming in from really all over the United States, and in fact, we've had some inquiries coming from Europe at this point. So people are very excited for what we're doing here in Albany. And based on contracts we've not only captured, but we're working on, we're going to be pulling a lot of work in from out of state. So my knuckles have bloodied from knocking on wood so often, but things are really going incredibly well. Bryce had a brief introduction here, but I don't want to say a whole lot more. I'd like to introduce Bryce Winnie. I sat here on the left because he's my right-hand man on this project. He's going to be a really critical part to this project. We do have a HIP arriving very soon. It's on a boat right now called the Saturn. If you're interested, I'll send you the tracking information, but there's a website where you can see this boat coming across the ocean. Again, bloody knuckles from knocking on wood. We're praying there's no more hurricanes in the Atlantic Ocean right now, but it's working its way over. We expect the HIP unit to be placed gently, I used to say dropped, placed very gently into the building on November 18th. Yeah, there it is. So that's our owners there to my right, and our elder owner, David, or his wife is also there. I've got another picture, which I didn't send Seth, but it's Marcia and her, kind of with her hands on her hips, looking up at the HIP unit like it's some sort of bully. It's really a great picture. We're going to frame it and put it on the wall. Again, the picture doesn't do it real justice for how big this thing is. There's a lot of ancillary hardware not pictured. All told is 1.5 million pounds. And that's a picture of the manufacturing facility in Sweden. So that is now on its way over across the ocean.
So is part of that going in the ground, or?
Yeah, so, good question. The pits the pits, plural, we've dug are about 13 foot deep. So if you stand me on my head, that tells you how much will go beneath the ground.
Okay.
Yeah, in the older days, when the technology wasn't as proven out, that was a safety feature. Nowadays, it's just because the thing's so darn tall. If we hadn't sunk it into the ground, the building would be, I guess, probably the tallest in Albany. So we've tried to balance it out between sinking it versus building height. So, yeah, in closing, again, I want to thank you. I think this is going to be a great partnership, and we're really excited what's happening. So, Bryce.
Mayor, City Council, I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to us. I'm excited to be a part of this. don't have a whole lot more to add in terms of the project. The city has been great to work with, I would say. Just to give you some background on myself, I've been with Selmet for the last several years. I was their quality director before taking on this role as the GM of the site. Yeah, a lot of business coming in for us. I'm very excited about it. Any questions that you guys have?
So how are you going to get that down the road to reach that location? Which
Very
route are you
carefully.
taking?
I'm very happy to say that part of the exorbitant fees we pay for this equipment is that the manufacturer is responsible to not only place the unit in the facility, but qualify it and hand us the keys. So they are figuring out those details. They're working with our local team and the state, obviously, and city to make sure that we can bring it in and not interrupt things too dramatically. It's there's only one, really, I think, one way down Marion Street, so
There's two.
I think they're coming down from
Yeah,
across the
coming
railroad
north.
tracks.
Yeah, 34 down. Wow.
Yeah. So it's a great question, and because Bryce and I are so busy trying to make sure that the building keeps going and we have business for this HIP unit.
So I think we
I've-
need to probably also check to see what's the weight limit of our bridge over the canal. So, Chris?
All
You
of
might
those
wanna-
details are being worked out. They've been coordinating closely with our public works staff, and they're working very closely with ODOT, both from a size and impact standpoint and also from a load standpoint. So I think we're in good shape. I think we got a plan we're ready to implement and have it show up.
Yeah.
I would love to have that tracking link.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to watch it
Yeah.
when it does
Yeah.
come in, yeah.
So-
Uh-huh.
so-
When it shows up, if we could, if we could be notified, so that we can go out there and watch 8,000 wheels go by, because it'll be a passel of them.
It's gonna be an event, I'm mad for the city.
Yeah.
I do have
Yeah.
a question, with the businesses coming in from your announcements and the things you have planned, are there any support businesses that support you that will be considering coming to Albany to set up shop and to, help the economy?
Yes.
They're going to use a lot of argon.
We're going to, well, yeah, besides the mass amounts of argon. Well, we're going to have a number of announcements come up in the coming months.
I imagine, you have to tell me.
Yeah,
I'm just-
the short answer is.
That's good to hear.
A
Thank
big yes in capital letters underlined. So we're looking at some complementary business actually ourselves to bring to Albany. But with this capability being local now, I think that in order to kind of consolidate the supply chain in this area and improve the turnaround times of the casting producers, there's a lot of interest now in this area.
Good, welcome to town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There was some questions that was, I think somebody had raised a concern over safety of it, and I think it was on Osso's blog. And I don't understand, the chemical stuff or how things are, like it could explode and level the whole town or something. What is the
Not the whole
safety?
town.
Well, I'm the neighborhood closest to it, so, yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's a good question. As I think we mentioned in February, there's no ancillary hazardous materials we're using. There's no chemicals involved. There's no outgassing. It is a pressure vessel. The manufacturer for this is called Quintus. They're based out of Sweden, which again is where the port of origination is. The reason we chose Quintus, despite the fact that they're quite more expensive than other producers, is the most highly engineered equipment really anywhere in the globe. So there hasn't been an accident with a HIP unit in decades at this point. We feel very good that it's over-engineered to the point where the risk is very low. Again, despite the fact we built pits, it's not to contain something. It's really just because we didn't want to have a 70 or 80 foot tall building. And their design is a bit unique compared to their competitors in that it should not rupture, and if there was a worst-case scenario, it wouldn't rupture in a way which would cause a explosion. It's actually designed that it would leak before it would burst. So it's a big wire-wound design, which I could give a seminar at some point on engineering behind it, or at least attempt to. Thank you.
Yeah.
But we consider it to be very safe. I like Bryce, and I'd like him to continue to be an employee of Stack for a long, long time, so I certainly wouldn't ask him to work in a facility if I thought there was any hazard to it.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
And Mayor, the product you're talking about inside is argon gas, which is inert. I mean, you're breathing 0.6% of it every time you take a breath. And so it's not like water or steam that it expands a bunch from a liquid to a gas. It's always a gas at those kinds of pressures and temperatures. And so if it goes away, and it's inside something, when you go twice as far out, it's half the pressure. And then it's in all directions, so, it goes down dramatically with not very much distance.
I just remember when Ormet blew in the late 70s and everything in my house shook and stuff flew off the walls. So,
Different process.
yes.
And that was
Right,
hydrogen.
yeah.
And the latest one was steam and hydrogen.
Yeah.
Completely different.
Dick.
Can you tell us the size of the piece you can process and the temperatures and the pressures you use, or is that all
No.
confidential?
No, we can share that. The vessel itself, the white part there in the middle, it's got an internal working diameter of 63 inches, which, we selected that size for a reason. That's as big as any casting produced or in the plan for the local titanium foundries. The pressure we can operate to is 30,000 PSI, which is as high as any aerospace specification that's in existence or expected to be in existence. And the temperature is high enough to handle any material any metallic material at this point. And we won't do ceramics, but anything that's being cast here in the state of Oregon, we can process in this HIP unit.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I can envision people having a question of what it is that is happening. Could you give us a 1-minute synopsis of, grain size, squeeze it down to whatever? So Joe Schwartz out there behind the camera is going to be able to understand it?
Yeah, so I'll take that one. So in short, there's two processes that we'll go through. So one, when you cast any kind of metal, when it cools, it'll actually pull apart internally, so you'll have voids in there. And so under this process, you heat it up to the point that the metal is somewhat malleable, and then under the extreme pressure, it just crushes those voids. And so it allows for a part in the aerospace industry, you can make it lighter now. You don't need as much material for the structural strength. The other piece of it is with new technologies coming on, there's powder material and additives that are going on. So we can actually take those powders and compact those into a solid piece as well that can be machined later or changed into other product down the line. So that's the long and the short of what the hipping process does. So hot isostatic pressing is what the HIP stands for.
Thank you.
So are we going to be the hipping capital of the United States now?
We sure hope
We're
so.
working on it.
That's our plan.
Good.
We're pretty ambitious individuals.
And they're not old enough to be from the 60s.
This will be a world-class facility. It's really beautiful. It's a great design. It's going to be a very impressive facility. Again, there's a lot of excitement, not only from our customers, but from the industry in general. So I think it's going to be a really big success.
Good.
We got work to do.
Yeah, it looks like something out of Star Wars movie, R2-D2, a giant one.
No, those always end well. Well, we're the good guys, but something always explodes in those
Yeah.
movies, so we none of that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay,
Thank you.
other questions? All right, okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, council, do you have any other questions of staff on this? Or other words, you do have a resolution that's on page 4.
I move for the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. All right, thank you, folks. Okay, item B's been removed, so we're going down to award of contract. This is awarding a contract to Dick Welker Construction for sewer point repairs. And staff have anything on that? Stacy?
Stacy's got it.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. Staff is recommending that council award a contract in the amount of $239,636 to Dick Welker Construction. They're located here in Albany for the construction of the 2019 sewer point repair projects. We received 4 bids for this project, ranging from the low bid up to approximately $354,000. The engineer's estimate was $250,000. This project includes improvements to short segments of sewer pipe. There's 13 locations where we're going to be making improvements. The pipe is damaged, and in some cases, the pipe is partially collapsed. Almost all of the segments are located in backyards, which makes access difficult. You'll see by the summary of the estimated project costs that it is estimated to be over budget. Staff has reviewed the cost and does feel that their cost is reflective of what the project actually is going to cost. During design for a project of this type, we work with the property owners to access backyards. We televise the sewer mains, so we're less likely to run into changed conditions that could result in change orders. There are adequate funds in the sewer capital project to cover the anticipated overage on the project. Are there any questions?
Just one question. Have we worked with Dick Welker Construction before?
Yeah, we've worked with Dick Welker Construction for many, many years.
Okay,
Yeah.
I thought I recognized the name, but, okay, great.
Actually, yeah, many years, but I hadn't heard the name for quite a while, so, yeah.
And
That's actually one of the contractor that typically does a lot of our sewer lateral replacement projects. So it's a good fit because they're used to working in backyards and working with homeowners.
Oh, good. Great. Okay, council, what would you like to do with this
And
item?
those are mostly,
Move to approve.
are those mostly pipe bursting projects?
Different construction methods. There's going to be point repairs that require excavation, and then we're also going to be doing cured in place sleeves that go inside the pipe. So there's different construction methods that we're going to be using depending on what's wrong with the pipe.
Alex, did I hear a motion?
I move to approve.
Second.
All right, any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. All right, thank you, Stacy. Next, council is adoption of the consent calendar, and you have quite a few items there, but if there isn't any that need to be pulled off this evening, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to
Mayor,
approve.
I have a question, Mayor.
Oh, okay.
Since we've put the resignations and the appointing on the consent calendar rather than having them separate now, I would assume that when we have a resignation that they're sent a thank you note for their service.
I just signed it, yeah.
Okay, all right.
That's
That's
always
why it
done.
was always nice to have them separate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, it is.
Okay.
Okay, I heard a motion for approving the consent calendar. Is that right, Mike? And
Yep.
was there a
A
second?
second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right, back page. Now we have staff reports, and this one's on the revenue enhancement and cost containment.
Give Jorge a minute here. And I understand that it might have been a little bit difficult to read this depending on what size you had the document. But hopefully that's legible there. And first of all, a word about something you don't see up there, and that's franchise fees. And you'll recall that when we first started going over this spreadsheet, we talked about the potential for making all the franchise fees consistent across the board at 7%. So Republic and Northwest Natural were at 6 and 5, and so we're working currently, and that's moving ahead. Okay, your tasking for us last time we talked about this was to flesh out the timeline a little bit more for each of these, and then to go into a little bit greater depth with pros and cons. So
and Jorge's going to help me out with this. If you have any questions, please feel free to pipe up and we'll address them right at the moment. The first thing up there, you see the public safety levy. We're going to need to move forward with this regardless of any of the other line items there. If we're to put this on the May 18th election, we'll need to have direction from council by February 3rd, and then a resolution adopted by February 26th, and then we'll need to file by March 19th, at which point it becomes a pending measure. And of course, you're aware that that restricts us as staff to speaking just to factual answers to questions. So one of the things for you to consider and still discuss is the fact that the levy could be increased, and each 10-cent increase would yield about $350,000 potentially. Of course, compression is still a matter of concern. So we'll move on to the second line item, the utility fee. We, as staff, we're moving forward with researching this. You'll see that it's been separated after that second column there into two rows. And the top one is assuming council approval, and the bottom one is assuming council referral to the voters for approval. In either case, the timeline's about 18 months from approval, and the pros and cons you've probably already read in the columns next to it. The third line, or the third line item, is the now called the sugary drink tax.
Could you go back up
Yeah,
to the public safety levy, though? If it was increased, sure, you go to the voters in May, but that does not hit the tax bills until that following year, November, right? We wouldn't see additional revenues till then.
So if you raise it by 10 cents
Yeah,
or 20 cents.
because
or
it would
whatever.
only be for the following years, that fiscal tax year, fiscal
Yeah,
year.
the tax statements in
Right.
November of 2020.
Yeah, right, it'd be on those.
Oh, okay.
I will confirm that.
2021.
Because the tax bill, we're already receiving, probably this week, our tax bill for the 2020.
Right.
So it would not be until that following year, 2021 then.
Mary,
The current levy expires June 30, 2021.
the question is, though, I think the mayor's question is, if you vote in an increase, does that start, when is that effective? Does the current levy
You'll only
go
see
all the
money.
way to the end
Yeah.
of its 5 years? Or does the increase start? And that's something I'll have to,
We'll have to find that out.
yeah.
I think if it's in by June 30th, the assessor's office can get it on for that November, because
But in other words, our current levy doesn't expire till 2021, you said, right?
Right, but if we pass it in 2020, that would replace it like a year ahead of time. So I
We'd be
think,
replacing it,
we
but in
would,
other words, we wouldn't have to be, we could be extending it.
I think it would depend on how you word it on the ballot.
Yeah.
I always assume that it doesn't take effect until the previous one, or the current one expires.
No, you
Yeah.
can change it.
Which would be
You can
a couple
replace it
years.
with
Let-
that.
let-
It
let
would
me
have to do with
confirm
how
that.
it's worded on the ballot, and also has to do with how we file the tax form, so we'll
Yes.
find out.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Question about that. I asked Bessie, and Bessie was about 60.42% sure.
Which part?
Is this a
Okay.
percentage, or is this a dollar amount?
Which one are you talking about?
The
Levy or fee?
the levy, is a percentage of, we get 1%, we get 2%, whatever that, or is it we get $3 million each time?
We get so much per thousand.
It's a dollar. So it's a percentage.
Yeah.
Okay, so it goes up with increased value.
And as long as it's not in assessed value.
Yeah.
Because RMV it wouldn't go up, it's only the assessed.
Right.
So my tax bill, I looked at it today, my RMV increased up higher than the year before, but it's only the 3% up, so I'm actually more in compression than I was this current year. So we might have a lot of properties still like that more, if compressions even hit more.
I guess I didn't get a clear answer on that. It sounded like you said it's a certain amount per thousand.
Yeah.
Right.
So is it 20 cents per thousand, or is it
No, it's
1%?
currently at 115 per thousand. So if the property value increases, you'll get 115 out of the thousand.
More than
One, right?
$1.15
Yeah,
per
it's a
per
dollar.
So
thousand.
it is $1 fixed dollar.
It is $1 fixed
No.
amount. Yep.
No, it's a
Yeah, I'm
percentage. It's $1.15
Per
per thousand
Property value.
property value. So if it goes up, the property value goes up, gives you more thousands in property value, so you get more $1.15s.
But the ratio is calculated is a fixed dollar amount per thousand.
Yes.
Yeah,
Who sets that fixed dollar amount? That's by the state law?
that's the assessor.
That's what.
Well, no, it's what we
It's
put in the
us.
ballot, so
Whatever
it's
we do.
what you approved to put in the ballot.
Right, so our levy is original tax base after measure, 4750 was $6.40 per thousand. So then in 2002, we went out to the public safety levy of 95 cents per thousand, and then we increased it a while back, voter approval for $1.15 per thousand. So as assessed values go up, then the amount we receive goes up. But we're not going up to what RMVs are going up, the real market value.
It's
That's
assessed
where you
value.
have that compression.
One piece to add, Peter, on this particular line item is that we put a potential value or impact for homeowners. So a home that is $270,000 of assessed value is currently paying $310 for the public safety levy portion of their tax bill. If the council decides to increase it by 20 cents in addition to the 115, that represents an additional $54 to their public safety related tax bill, for a total of $364.50 for that contribution assessed on the assessed value for the taxpayers.
So currently it's 310, it's going to go up to 360. Okay.
That's a 20%, a 20 cents increase, represents that number. Just wanted to clarify that.
And do keep in mind, tax exempt properties don't pay any of that, any taxes, which there's quite a few throughout the city.
Okay, I think we were at the sugary drink tax, and in this one, the devil's in the details. It will require voter approval, so it potentially competes against numbers 1 and 2, line items number 1 and 2, although probably by the time you could get that on a ballot, we'd be past May of next year. It would be into November or the May of the following year. And also I would point out too that from the research that Jorge has done on this, it seems that the cities that have incorporated a sugary drink tax, they do have a sales tax. So the sales tax in place is what helps them implement this sugary drink tax. And then finally, the public defense fee. I would ask Sean to weigh in a little bit here, but as we look into the future and see rising costs of providing defense for indigent offenders, this is an area that probably should be seriously considered. And there are, aside from the fact that we do need to consider potentially increasing the amount that we pay public defenders, there's also the potential for aid and assist orders that we could receive. So if the $25 amount that you see there is an arbitrary figure, if that was implemented, that would yield about $40,000 to $50,000 per year to help with that, with the very important mission of public defense. Sean, you want to add anything?
You did a pretty good job. I must I must not have done a good job explaining it before, but in a nutshell, the city is we provide
defense to defendants that can't afford attorneys, just like the circuit court does. So they're entitled to a public defender if they can't afford one, and that's borne by all the taxpayers of the city of Albany. We are currently paying $50 an hour for defense lawyers to perform this service. That number hasn't gone up since 1990. And they are having an extremely hard time retaining attorneys to perform this service. And it's not a surprise that this happens, but a lot of defense lawyers coming right out of law school take a position like this. They use it as kind of a stepping stone to get one of the defense contracts at the circuit court. And so we're constantly having some, turnover there. We're getting ready to lose another one, as a matter of fact, because they just got appointed at the beginning of this week to the defense contract at the circuit court. So the next thing I will look for is a resignation from them. So we've talked, the staff's talked, and they're going to have to go up in what they're paying. And even if we go up $10 an hour to $60 an hour, that's going to increase our expenses in the municipal court budget by, $25,000, $30,000. And what we're trying to do here is to find a way to recoup some of that cost. And by doing this, what it is it's a $25 fee that's added as a court cost when a defendant pleads guilty, no contest, or is convicted by a judge or jury of a criminal offense. It's not for everybody who's accused of a criminal offense. So if they go in and they're found not guilty, or the case is dismissed, or there's some kind of a plea bargain and then it doesn't include the fee, they don't pay the fee. It's not directed towards homeless people or anything else. It's every defendant, not just defendants who need a public defender, but every defendant. So if they represent themselves or if they have a privately retained attorney, anybody who's convicted of this crime, of a crime, or pleads guilty to the crime would be the one paying this $25. So if there's really an easy way to avoid paying the fine, if you don't want to pay the fine, and that is don't commit a crime, and then you don't have to pay it. So people who would argue, well, that's not fair, well, there's an easy way around that. So we think that's a kind of a no-brainer of a way to try to recoup some of the money that we're going to have to spend in the next budget on public defense. And so that was it.
Thanks, John. Okay, and then Jorge, the cost containment measures.
So I have a question, Peter, about this fee. Is this something that the city council can approve, or
Yes.
how would that work?
Some of the things, if the council could give us authorization to implement it, yes, they could.
I have a question then.
Yeah.
How do we arrive at $25 and not say?
Arbitrary number.
35 or $50?
We could have made it 10 or, well, I'd say we could make it 10 or 1,000. If I made it 1,000, it probably would be a problem. But yeah, it was an arbitrary number. We were thinking of how much money we might want to try to generate and what the average amount of convictions or guilty pleas we have a year, and that's kind of where we came up with that number. But it could be more or it could be less if the council chooses that, so.
But it was driven by the potential cost of adding
Added, yeah.
$10 for the
Right.
defense.
Yeah, that's true. We had that, the $10 going
One
from
of the
$50 to
drivers for
$60 an hour, so.
Well, I'd like to see something, instead of arbitrary numbers, something that's
Realistic.
more realistic,
Mhm.
whether that's $35 or $50. If it's $50, that's what it is. Like you said, if you don't want to pay the fine, don't do the crime.
But to some extent, it's going to be somewhat arbitrary, because you're not going to be able to raise it enough to pay for the whole indigent defense.
Understood, yeah.
Right.
Well, and the indigent are not going to have the money to pay it anyway.
It's true, and what happens in those cases is if we have a defendant, and we have quite often defendants who are ordered to pay fines or, sometimes restitution, and they don't have money to pay those fines, and so then what they do is they can work that off. The judge gives them an opportunity for compensatory service to work it off, and it's, I believe it's minimum wage, and they get credit for 8 hours, like $87.50, something like that a day for every day they work, and so they can work it off every day, and so and it would be the same with this fee. If they had this fee assessed and they couldn't pay it, then that would just be part of their work crew that was assessed to them. So,
Okay.
but if council has a number they would like us to entertain, we could certainly do that.
Well, you would need this to still come back in a resolution form?
We would, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, council, would you like staff to kind of bring back a resolution implementing this fee? And then you can be able, if you want to adjust that fee before you finalize it, you can?
Well, it would be nice to know kind of how, what that fee should be. I mean, you know.
To make up the difference.
Right now, I see a $25 or a $35 or a $50, and, you know, why one rather than the other, and what is the set of justice behind it?
So just throwing a number out there, I'll give you an example. Last year, and it looks like coming this year again too, if you look online, we spent about $80,000 in criminal defense, indigent defense fees for public defenders. If we raise that, if we have that same amount of cases next year, and we raise it by $10, we'd spend about $108,000. So we would be about $28,000, and that's just in 1 year, and that's assuming that we don't have an increase in the cases we see or that come before the court, and that we don't have to raise that number again. It's probably not realistic to think that we will go another 30 years without raising the fee for the public defenders, but,
Well, that isn't the way of saying it. If the judge is limited by statute to how much they can charge a defendant, this would not be limited by statute.
Correct.
Other than whatever we put on it. And so if the judge gives the $25, you've been convicted, so it's $25 for this, and it's $200 for the other, well, there's the $200 that is, they would have a overall $250 fine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem with making it $25 or $50. If, at the end of the day, the judge is going to look at it, and what's this guy going to be able to pay?
Right. Well, and again,
Or how many hours can we?
Right, and that's what the judge would have to do, is not say how much can this person pay, but what's the appropriate sentence, and then if that person can't pay that, then that person needs to work that number off. If we went on what is this person able to pay, then all the people who need a public defender, not all of them, but a lot of them, wouldn't have any fines, and so,
Yeah.
Was there
No.
other cities?
I said that badly. What should this person pay? It's
Right.
not, you know.
Right. Well, and as an example, I'll throw another example out there. Someone's convicted or pleads guilty or no contest to an A misdemeanor. That's punishable by up to 1 year in jail and up to a $6,250 fine. That will never happen in municipal court on a first, second, or fifth offense on a misdemeanor well, at least it hasn't in as long as we've had municipal court. It's going to be less than that. It's going to be 10 days in jail, or if it's a first offense, it's going to be a $350 or a $500 fine. That $25 gets added to that fine.
Yeah.
They're not going to pay the $6,250 plus these fees on top. They never hit the statutory amount, so.
How many other cities have this fee, do you know, and what their comparison?
I don't, but everybody's fees are different. Municipal courts have different, they have different fees, just depends on where you go.
So council, maybe if staff can bring back a resolution to it, leave that piece blank, and then bring back kind of a comparison of what other cities are charging,
what
and then you
court
can
costs are.
decide, what that amount should
Yeah,
be.
that works for me.
Do you want that?
Sure. Me as well.
Okay, is that okay? Bring it back in a resolution, so we can have it at our next work session, and then take action, yes or no, before the next council meeting, so we can get that piece kind of implemented. Okay?
Okay, and then there's not much change in the last page here, the three cost containment measures that we've previously considered. I would note that the library districts is not really cutting costs, it would be, if you establish a district, it just really establishes a stable and secure funding source. Taxpayers would still pay to keep the library open. The city would have a $3 million, would no longer have the $3 million cost of supporting the library, but taxpayers would still bear that.
Can I make a comment on that too? When I can't remember how many years ago it was that we were looking at that library district, and it went, Scioto, Lebanon, all over the region. You could still be, when it comes to a district, then you have the board to it would not be all Albany representation. You get it brought, so there could be somebody from Scioto or Lebanon or in the rural area. Well, they could make a decision and choice to close the Carnegie Library. So there is no guarantee, even if you went this route of a library district, that we'd even be able to keep our Carnegie Library. So.
Well, but we would have as many, I would think that the board of said district would be proportional to the amount of population, right?
I can't remember how it was structured. Ed was around. He might remember.
Well, but it could be.
How many representatives did we get out of that?
Rich is right. We have to review the state law, but it is proportional, so I think let's say 2 to 5 would be all, but.
Yeah.
But still,
Right, so,
So
but
you'd
you still
still be
take
in the
that
minority.
chance. Yeah.
Countywide.
Yeah, so you do take that risk, so, okay, thank you,
And-
Peter.
And that, I'd ask Jorge if he has anything to add to that, or we can open it up to your discussion, further discussion. Anything else? Jorge?
Yeah, we have all the information there.
Okay.
Can we, do we have any more information on the library district to explore that? It says explore. Can we get any more information on that, or what that may look like, and what would that do to our budget? I see 3 million. But could we get some more information on that?
Sure. What we were looking for, is council guidance on which of these you want us to pursue. So, we're moving out pretty good with the public safety levy. Jeff's crew are looking at utility fees. And we, now we have the direction from you to come back with a resolution for the public defense fee. I can certainly work with Ed and provide more information with respect to what he's already looked into.
So, excuse me, Peter,
Yeah.
so does a library district have to include other municipalities?
That's the idea, that it would be. Yeah.
Good question, Mike. So explore means, in essence, beginning the conversation. Again, a lot has changed in the 12 years, when the Library League was a conversation. So explore means to touch base with all of the political entities of the county, Lebanon, Sweetholme. Are they still on board with the concept? Then begin to look at the budgets of all the libraries, then determine what a permanent rate would be for the district. The details of the board, of an election, of putting it on, going to the county, just complicated. So by explore, we mean all that political work, and lots of devils, lots of details. We're willing to do that, and as I mentioned maybe a couple of meetings ago, there's a lot of infrastructure in place, there are a lot of relationships in place already that weren't there when we had the Lynn Library League discussion, so I think it's worth touching base. There are special districts, Alex, and there are county systems, so when we use the word district here, we mean it broadly. I mean, it's possible to talk to Lynn County and say, do you want to,
support us and have a county-wide library system or a specific district. So different ways to consider how do you fund library services in the geographic region. So lots of moving parts, but I think it's a useful conversation. I'm certainly going to get more value for our dollar than, for instance, closing the Carnegie. That's not a lot of money. There doesn't seem to be a lot of community interest. Again, the details are complicated, but we have history, and most of Oregon has already done this work in thinking. There are consultants everywhere. So that's kind of some of what we mean by explore, Mike. I hope that helps.
So if, say, it was decided that, yes, this is something we're going to do, how long would it take to set up, say, 18 months, 12 months, 16 months? How long was it going to take?
1.5 to 2 years.
1.5 to 2 years?
I think we put that up, and it's,
Yeah.
it'll take a while.
I just missed
Deal
it.
with everybody, and then you have to have a vote.
Yeah, and you need a vote, and
Then you have to vote to do it, and then you have to have who's going to be on the board, which could be a vote or
so
could be.
there are elections.
Whatever else.
Yeah.
And then Albany loses ownership. So
Well,
it's additional-
so it
Yeah.
becomes a different conversation. It becomes, how do you fund access to services, information, programs, because the public really doesn't care. They go in, they want stuff on the shelf, they don't care if it came from fill in the blank. So there is an ownership, but the philosophy of public libraries is, here we are, open for everyone. So there is a little adjustment there, but, Albany's provided such great leadership in the county for, 100 years. I can't think of a scenario where, a change of ownership would really be a negative impact for the actual library users. So it is a different perspective on how, and again, the nice thing
That's
is.
what you included.
Yeah, the nice
I mean, if
thing,
you include Mill City and Idana and, and they have, realistically, gee, I'm gonna have money come out of my pocket to take care of some libraries, I want some library.
Yeah.
I want some, they're gonna wanna have somebody from the East County representation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
devil's in the details, that's the.
and it's a different way to look at, if.
School district.
Yeah, so if we're looking at 85 plus and climbing % of the general fund for public safety, there's no end in sight. So this seems to be a creative way to at least continue really very popular service throughout the country, and, so.
So what's the closest library district to us? Corvallis Library District?
Doesn't Corvallis?
Yeah, Corvallis is a county city.
Benton County.
The special districts per se, there are a lot of small entities, especially down south, and I believe Multnomah County, the largest system in the state by far, last year or a year and a half ago, created a special district. So they're and we would draft on them because they've done the recent work. There's a whole, for the council's perusal, reams of paper, good information about what they went through, the whole process. The other districts are really small, and then by and large, most of these districts are county, some combination of countywide systems. Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's what we mean by explore, Mike.
Okay.
Thank you.
So council, with the utility fee, for like general fund services, do you want to give staff direction to start working on that program, since it's going to have to be coming up with a methodology over it and implementation process?
Mayor, we're actually working on gaining more information into, so you don't really I mean, we'll be able to come back to you with further information after we talk to a consultant and do some more staff work. So that's probably not one that you need to worry about immediately.
And what's the timing for that to come back?
Jeff, do you have a projected time for that to come back?
Last we met with our internal group, we had talked about January, is that right?
It sounds about right.
Come back in January. So, I mean, what we really need to be expediting things if we're gonna, start helping out the budget, but that's still several months away, but 3 months away before really to get full speed into that process.
Right.
Yeah, well,
No.
I think we're going about this whole thing the wrong way. I mean, we never have really had a qualitative question asked. What's more important? I mean, in our own lives, what's more important, getting killed or having flowers? I don't think that's really a question anybody's going to have a problem with. We have that spending. I recognize there are several different people at the dais, but to me, fire, what don't you do? You don't kill people. You don't let them burn. You don't let them get poisoned. You don't let you don't let the sewer back up. Those are things you have to do. You don't allow that to happen. You protect people. So that's what you have to do. Then what do you want to do? Well, I want to have a nice place where I can walk down the street and I like the way it looks, and I want to be able to have a library that I can go see if I want to do that. Well, there are the things you have to do and the things you want to do, and then there are some places, the things that are nice to do, like, from my perspective, having flowers along the highway at the couplet. Well, everything, to me, does not have the same value. I think what we ought to be doing, and I think there's been a bit of a game going on here. If you go back to Eric, what's his face, from the 1960s, games people play, what we're getting is, here, make a decision, and then we come up with ways of doing it, and then you have people attack from every direction. We're the ones getting attacked, and we're discussing stuff. Well, part of what we're doing is micromanaging. When I came up with, gee, shall we repurpose the Carnegie Library? That's a thought process. Only it's, well, gee, you must be stupid because you don't like libraries. Well, I like reading a hardback book. I don't like looking at a cell phone reading something, but that's just me. I think what we need to be doing is having a policy standard that says fund things where people are not going to get killed and they're not going to get poisoned and they're not going to get all the things you must do. And if you have to take money from something else to do that, you do that. And once police and fire and water and sewer are fully funded, after that, then you look at the other things. Now what do we have to do to get those in line? Because we don't seem to have, when we cut the budget here, we cut it by a percentage, which to me says everything has the same value. Well, I don't think everything does have the same value, and I don't think that people who are at the library would think someone should get sick because they didn't have a second place to get a book. I don't think that's the thought process they're going to have. I don't think they're going to have that thought process. So I think we're doing it backwards.
Well, but the only thing is like you're saying, you want to keep police and fire whole. We can't currently keep police and fire whole. We have...
Yes, we can. All we have to do is say, keep police and fire whole, do what you need to do to get that, and then show us the places that you did it, because we have staff who know more about what it is that they can do to save money than we know.
Okay, so I guess, I mean, we're gonna have to agree to disagree here. I want a community that I can be proud to live in, that has the amenities in it to enjoy. I
And
don't
you're
want a
willing to
community.
cut police to do it.
Well, no, I'm willing to go out and bring in new revenue sources
And
so we
tax
can
people
keep
more.
our programs whole. And what I'm hearing from the community, they want to keep our programs whole. They understand the tax limitations. But a utility fee is something that can be able to help keep our programs whole, and so many communities all over this state are going that route, because they know property taxes do not fund even police and fire. So we're gonna have to look outside. It's either you want a community to live in and enjoy, or if you just wanna have a basic community, I mean, that, you're just gonna erode away the services and the amenities in our community and the programs, and there's a lot of people that will not wanna live in this community if that's, is
Well,
what's gonna happen.
that's just too bad. I'd rather they were unhappy than they were dead.
That's going a little bit of extreme.
Yeah, it is, but that's the choice if you don't have enough. You know, it's the same old thing from the 1950s. If you don't have enough, you throw money at the military, and if you don't have enough, you've wasted money. If you spend too much, you've wasted money, and if you don't spend enough, you're dead. Well, yes, it is a bad choice, but ultimately, that's the responsible choice. It says, you do the things you have to, and then you focus on the things that you don't have to do. Now, is keeping flowers alongside of Sandy and Boulevard worth raising taxes? Yes, it is. No, it isn't. Then you know what you're looking at.
So to me, the responsible thing to do would be to be able to keep our programs whole, and how are we going to make it happen? And that would be as if we have to impose a fee, we impose a fee. But it's to keep our
Everything
community
has the
a
same
livable
value,
community.
not the same thing.
So your view of it is totally different than I look at it. It's when it comes to being responsible, we have to make the tough decisions on this council, and we have to look at the whole community's needs overall. And if it's going to take new revenue sources, it takes new revenue sources. But I don't want to be in a community that's going to be eroding away all the programs that we have and not have a livable community that we have today. So,
Well, I think you need to look at it too, from the standpoint that, do we want to be able to attract people that we would like to have move here, industry-wide and otherwise? And if it's a shambling, falling down community with nothing but cops and fire engines running around, and lousy libraries, terrible looking parks, falling down schools. Of course, we're not responsible for the schools. But I think there's a big advantage to having an attractive community.
Yeah,
Just,
that's it.
I've been thinking more about the utility fee by reading what staff has put here. I guess my question would be, maybe staff could help us with this. Okay. If we decide, it says we could replace the public safety levy, okay? We could fund the Parks and Rec library. So if you don't charge the people for these on their taxes, then what kind of a fee would it be? You know, like, how would you balance that out or get it a little higher? I'd kind of like to know that to see, you know, is it even doable? Because it could be so much that it's not even possible. But I'd like that.
That's right, and we have talked about that
Okay.
in order to, it sounds very good that you would eliminate the public safety levy in exchange for implementation of the public safety utility fee. But the amount that you would have to raise, the fee that you would have to impose for public safety utility would be substantial.
Yeah.
I don't have that figure for you.
Okay, I mean,
But-
and it's a thought.
And then there's issues of timing here.
Sure.
As well, because we can't afford not to go out for the public
Oh,
safety
no.
levy while we continue to work on the utility fee.
Exactly.
So, you know, that's that's something, so the public safety levy will be pursuing that and coming back to you with the resolution. And then if the utility fee is desired, that's something that we should then talk about, the amount. You remember that the amount that Corvallis did was $12 for police, I believe, and $5 for fire, for an increase for a fee of $17.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard.
Ours would have to be substantially bigger than that to eliminate the need for the public safety levy. And that's a substantially
Yeah, 'cause
sized.
I always, even with the county, I always thought, it's a heck of a way to run an army, because you have to go out to the voters every 5 years, and you have to pray that they get it. I remember, I can't remember what year it was, that we didn't pass the county levy, and it came right down to the May ballot, and the sheriff was handing out the pink slips.
Mhm.
And it became a reality, because he was giving them out because he had to give them out 2 weeks in advance, and so it really brought it to the voters' attention that, oh, this is really real, they're not just, so, I mean, I think it's worth looking at if we could figure out what, how much it would save here after this, and if it's that way, but.
Peter?
I'm willing to look at anything.
Right.
So one of my concerns about a utility fee, or whatever the number, I sit with people daily that can't afford their medication. The fees for the Part B premium is going up next year. So an additional something on somebody that's 80 years old that can barely make ends meet bothers me tremendously. So when people are saying $17, $18, that matters to somebody on Medicare. And so I have a real problem that we want to impose something, or people propose to impose a tax or a fee on people that sit in front of me daily, and I save them $30, and then we're going to impose something else to raise it $70. So not only did we put them in a bad position, we put them in a worse position. Throwing out numbers without research from the staff, who is going to impact the most. When I sit down with a senior Medicare beneficiary and I save them $50 a month and they start crying, and then we have to go back and tell them we're going to impose a $70 fee or $20 fee or whatever, I will have a hard time sleeping at night and also justifying that
And
to
I
a senior.
understand that. I was thinking that if we would do something like, you would eliminate some of the taxes that would actually offset. I don't know how much, and that's what I'm looking for, because I understand, I mean, I'm in the same boat, if you didn't have insurance, how could you pay for your insurance?
With Part B
For your
going up,
medication.
what, $8, $10 next year, with expenses going up for Medicare Advantage and Medicare Supplement plans, imposing another fee would be detrimental to a lot of seniors in this community. And I know that firsthand. I live it every day.
But if we raise up the public safety levy, it's still going to go up in their pocket too, because that's part of the property taxes, whether they're paying rent or not.
Understood.
Yeah.
But just more research. I need more information.
So what Alex brings up indirectly the question of progressive versus regressive taxes. And, a utility fee would be, it amounts to basically something that's regressive. And our hands, though, are kind of tied because of the way that the property tax system is structured.
Yes.
So it's a rock and a hard place. Jeff had something to add.
I was just going to note that when we got the direction from council to start some preliminary investigations into what a utility would look like, I think the motivation behind that was really touching on what each of you is bringing up now. I think that with the work that staff is doing at the moment, we'll be able to address each of those items. So when we're talking about scenarios on revenue targets and how that translates into a potential rate under different models, that's when we're going to be talking about what does it take to keep the current levels of service that we're providing as they are today. So not looking at growing them, but just keeping them at what they're at. What is that type of target? What does a rate look like if we're only holding service levels for police and fire? Different levels of revenue targets. The idea is we end up showing you a range of scenarios and what that translates to into potential rates. So seeing the actual numbers so that you can understand and have a gauge as to what those impacts might be. Now, granted, they're preliminary numbers. It's not like we'd be ready to go and implement the next day, but it'll give you a feel for level of comfort that you have on pursuing that versus something else. And then give you a gauge as to whether you might want to consider a low-income assistance program like we have on our water bills. Is there something like that council would want to consider, and we could investigate that? And I think by the nature of what the dollar amounts of the challenges that lie ahead, we're going to end up doing exactly what you're talking about, Rich, and that is having to identify what our priorities are, because, piggybacking on what Ed's had said about police and fire services taking up 85% of the general fund or whatever the number is, and that the library budget is $3 million. Well, if you think back a meeting or two ago, Gina Yeager had reported that in the next budget, that gap, that increasing gap is an additional $4 to $5 million a year that we're behind in covering our costs from what this current budget is. So it's not just filling a gap that we experienced in this budget. That gap is growing the next 2 years and the next 2 years. And the gap that we're looking at, and just that difference in growth in revenues compared to growth in expenses, is greater than the entire library budget. So some really, really challenging discussions ahead. But when we have that rate discussion, or potential rate discussion, the other thing we do, just like we do when we talk about water and sewer services rates, or stormwater now at this point, you look ahead and say, okay, this is what you would start with, but what might you need to do 4 or 5 years down the road? And so when you start looking at that, that tells that story, and you're going to end up in the position of balancing these two perspectives, I think, between what are your priorities and what do you want to try to secure additional revenues from, and where do you draw that line? I think the numbers that you'll see are going to drive you into that discussion, whether you want to go there or not.
That's the whole point. We're going to be there, and this is the easy part now. I mean, you cut away the fat, well, there's only so much fat. And that's when you have to start making tough decisions. When the time comes, we're going to be sitting there knowing there's a gun at our head and we haven't done what we needed to do to be ready. Because I'm talking about being ready. And it is obvious that some people just want to push it away. Gee, I don't want to deal with it, and we need to deal with it.
We can definitely.
How much of this financial problem we have is due to PERS? It's a large part of it, isn't it? And it's a growing part of it.
It's a portion of it.
And do we just say, people in Salem, just let PERS just go and we'll pay the balance?
Well, we don't have a choice.
Or do we campaign against it and say it's just too much?
The state is trying.
You need to raise your own money. You can't just bleed us forever.
One of the things we'll be able to report back on when we do those projections, and is one of the things I've asked Gina for, was when you look out 2 budgets from the one we're currently in, so 4 to 6 years from now, what's that gap, that difference in growth in revenues compared to growth in expenses, and what's that made up of? How much is that
we need to be able to do
PERS
something about
versus
our
how much of that is healthcare versus how much is A, B, C, and D. So we'll be able to talk about that when we get into that data, but it's a really hard conversation to have when you don't have dollars in front of you, and if there's a desire to try to have information sooner than January to start the discussion, we can do all we can to. I can't sit here and tell you and guarantee that I can have that done, because there's a lot of work that still has to be done, but we can do our best to try to get it sooner if that's council's desire.
Well, what's really disappointing to me is, we should have been working on this a year ago. But we did finish with Budget Committee in May, so that's been 5 months ago. And we talked about looking at this and looking at other revenue sources, and now we're being told another 3 months from now. I wish it.
But I think we're farther than we were last year.
So, but still, that's 8 months before then in January, say, well, looks like this is what can be some numbers. I mean, we should have been moving on this a lot faster. But, yeah. I mean, it'd be nice to have something down to really know, for us to look at. It looks like this is what it would end up costing to either keep programs whole or to be able to look out and, have enough revenue for the next biennium. None of that. We don't have anything to
Well,
even
we
make a decision.
actually have made headway on several of those initiatives. As I told you about in the beginning, franchise fees that is underway. Public safety levy you'll have to decide if you want to add that increase to it. And now, these are all small amounts, and they're not anywhere near the $4 to $5 million a year that Jeff was talking about and that Gina talked about.
But we could even have our street crimes unit. We could be losing that with the police department, and that is going to be a detriment too to our community. So we need to really get pushing and moving fast. And I think 3 months to me is too long to be waiting to have some numbers in front of us to see which routes to go.
Yeah, just one more comment is that, I mean, how many of us have read or heard on the news of cities having to do away with services? They close their libraries, they close their pools, they close, I mean, and that is, we don't want to do it, but if they don't have the money, that's what they have to do.
It depends on the community. There's communities that are imposing utility fees. Salem's looking at $8 a month. When I was just at League of Oregon Cities, there's many communities that are all looking at it, and some have already implemented because they don't want to be making the cuts.
And
So
that's
you
where
either you got
where
community
the public
leaders that
input's
don't
gonna-
care about programs or just say, okay, let's make cuts, they don't want to raise a fee, or you got communities that'll say, we want to keep our programs whole. So it just depends on who's sitting on that dais to say which route you want to go.
Well,
for each different city.
yeah, it does. Just like the roads here, it depends on our streets here. It's been going on for how many years and nothing's been done? And it's the same principle, okay? Nothing's been done with the streets. Why? It's disingenuous to say all of a sudden that staff isn't doing what they need to do quick enough. And that those issues. What about the streets? What about the PCI index and the street issues?
Well, we went out for a 5-cent gas tax.
And the
Support
5-cent
it?
gas tax would be like shooting a BB at an elephant.
Yeah.
Okay? It's $22 million. What would that have raised? $750,000 a year? No.
That's only for the feeders.
That's only
not
for,
even
yeah.
local streets.
Yeah, it's only for the arterials and collectors, so.
But it would have been better than nothing.
Well, yeah.
All you ever want to talk about, Mayor, is raising taxes. And, you should listen to more people. I mean, there are people who are perfectly willing to raise taxes. And there are a whole bunch of people that don't want, hey, you did this, and you did that, and you raised this, and you raised that. And they simply don't want to have that happen unless they know what's going on. And until such time that we know what the voter wants, until what they think is the most important thing and the least important thing, and having total unwillingness to even look at it is just exacerbating the problem.
And the utility fee that you want to charge, or you want us to go on, I will not vote for that unless it goes before the voters. The voters have a right to say whether they want that or not. They have that right. They're paying the bills. It's not, they're the owners. The taxpayers are the owners. This dais, these people, us on the dais are not the owners of this thing. The taxpayer is. And they have the right to say yes or no on any of the stuff that we're talking about. That's their right.
So I do want you to keep in mind, though, is if on any of these cost enhancements, if you want anything to go to the voters, I think who's ever supporting that needs to come back with a plan How are you going to make that happen going to the voters? Who's going to be running that campaign? Who's going to be your treasurer to that campaign? Who's going to go out and raise money to run a campaign? Who's going to manage that campaign? All the little pieces it takes to do a campaign. So I have been the one that has led that off of our levy ever since 2002. And if you're going to be saying to go to the voters over a utility fee when you have clear legal authority to just impose it, I will not do that campaign. So it's going to have to be one of you folks to do the campaign because staff can't do that campaign. So do keep in mind, if you want to make any decision when it comes to going to the voters, where's your plan for making that happen?
Mayor, Jorge had some ideas. You mentioned just now the idea of polling citizens to see what they would be supportive of, and Jorge has some ideas.
The council has a couple choices here to help get information from some citizens or some community members. And it's through the Balancing Act tool, we can actually present the scenario where we have, once we have a little bit further down some of the numbers and information, we can ask them if they're in support of that. So then you get some feedback from community members and see ahead of time of taking it to a potential vote or not. You get some information on that. So we have that tool where we can actually do a Survey Monkey survey as well, if that's something that council wants us to do. So at least you get not only the people that come to the council chambers to provide feedback, but we can get those folks that are at home that cannot come over and provide that feedback as well. It's not a scientific polling, but at least there is some information, feedback you can get from more people than just the people that are able to come down to the city hall.
And then if you do the Survey Monkey or whatever, at least they've had the chance. And then we do, what we need to do. I think that's not a bad idea.
I see Hassel leaving, but I think he can tell us who the feedbackers are going to be.
He's got a rush of blood.
He has the usual folks. Okay, is there anything else on this revenue enhancement, cost containment?
We don't have anything else.
Anything else? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Are we going to talk about raising our systems development charges?
That usually comes back to the CP, or you mean planning fees?
Well, yeah, that kind of thing, planning fees,
Right.
systems development charges, so forth.
And that is something too, that can be still looked at. We did the one piece, but not, jumping up more. It was just more of the cost of living, wasn't it, on planning fees?
Well, I'm wondering do our present systems development charges pay the cost of the stuff that needs to be done?
Only on capacity component piece. You can only pay for capacity.
Yeah, but then, is that being paid for by those charges?
Right, when it comes to sewer and water
Didn't we go through
and
an
streets.
exercise with this already?
Planning fees,
Didn't we already go through an exercise to improve, to raise those already,
Yes.
We had graphs and charts and stuff that you brought up there?
We've done both. We talked recently about planning, and we talked about SDC charges.
Yeah.
Are they high
In
enough?
the police, we did.
Well,
But
they're not
the
the maximum
SDCs.
allowable on planning or SDC.
Right.
And are they filling the bill?
I don't know, on the SDC's planning, we still subsidize planning department out of general fund dollars, out of tax dollars.
So council recently took action to generate around another $50,000 in planning-related fees when we talked about assessing a 15%, I'm trying to remember this right, a 15% of building plan review fees. So it's calculated, so you calculate your plan review fee for a building permit, what the building charges is 15% of that is what the planning fee ends up being. That goes to the general fund, and then, so that the goal of that is to be implemented by the beginning of the year. We have to go through a process with the state in order to get approval to do that. And then council provided direction on further information you would like to see this next year when you reconsider your planning fees, because you had just done a 8 or 9% fee increase on planning, and then you were making this other adjustment on the building plan review fees, and
So
so.
you're planning to ask us for that?
You've already provided direction on that. The change on the building building side of it, we'll have to come back to you for a final action. But you've already directed us to pursue that. And then early spring-ish type of time, you'll then take up planning fees again, and there was some specific information that council requested to bring back, so you could set some future targets and talk about what type of future increases you might want to make.
Yeah, well, I'd like to see them support your department.
I would too. I don't know that that's feasible. I think that it's likely, well, I know it is unfeasible. It's a nice aspirational goal. I think there's more that could be collected, but there's certainly some activities that the department conducts that are appropriately funded by the general fund. But where that line is fuzzy, and council needs to kind of weigh in on that and develop a plan on how to move forward.
Well, the bigger our city gets, the more it costs and the less we're able to pay for it.
Okay. Next item, are you done with this item?
Yes.
Okay, next item, general obligation bond for street projects.
This is the general obligation bond, yeah.
All right, I do have a vicinity map that shows the 6 streets that were originally proposed to consider for a general obligation bond that I could put on the screen. Would that be helpful?
It's in our packet.
I think so.
It's in our packet.
It's in your packet.
Well, the public might want to see it. Oh, I know where that street is at. I hate that street.
Well, it's good they get it fixed then, right?
Well, that stoplight right there gets run all the time. On Clay, 14. It's right in front of the mall.
It's the next to the last page.
14th and Gary.
Right there, right next to the mall.
Yeah,
Right
thank
in
you.
front of the flood.
That's okay.
Yeah. 2 people did it today.
So I'll go ahead and get started. This memo provides a summary of additional options that council asked staff to look at for a potential general obligation bond for street improvements to consider for the 2020 elections. Staff reported to council at the August 26th meeting. The option that was discussed at that meeting was based on 6 arterial and collector streets. These 6 streets are listed in the memo and then also shown on the vicinity map that's up there on the screen and in your council packet. The 2 additional options that council asked us to look at, one was eliminating 3rd Avenue from the proposed streets, and then the other was to eliminate 9th Avenue from the proposed streets. In addition, staff discussed that there were significant water and sewer improvements that would need to be considered in conjunction with the proposed street projects. At minimum, they're going to be approximately $6 million, and we would need to consider these in order to avoid cutting the streets after they've been improved. Council asked us to also bring back options that included the water and sewer improvements with the total bond amount and without the total bond amount. And so in the memo on the second page, which I think is page 32 in your council packet.
It's the numbers, yeah.
Did I get the numbers right?
Yeah, the numbers are in here.
Okay, yeah, I summarized the different costs associated with all 3 options. And I guess at this point, we're just asking for council direction, and then also if there's any additional questions that council has, I can answer them.
Okay, questions?
Well, I just will make one comment, that you get, like, with or without water and sewer. You don't ever want to do it without
Amen.
water and sewer. You know, if you're gonna do it, you've gotta do it all at once, because people get crazy when they see a street being done. Like, my street right beside me got the slurry seal. Now, if you came in and dug it up and fixed something, that'd really be bad. So I somehow,
Yeah.
we've gotta do it with all.
Yeah, I would leave the water and sewer in. I mean, it makes no sense to do, like you said, a road and then, because I'd be really upset.
And what these options illustrate is like, I mean, staff agrees with Counselor
Yeah.
Johnson and
Counselor
Counselor Johnson.
Johnson.
I'm sorry, just leaving.
Johnson, two Johnsons?
Johnson, there you go. Our company.
If the cost of the water and sewer improvements weren't included in the total bond amount, then we would recommend looking at other utility funds to make those improvements.
I'd be in favor of the original option, including the water and sewer.
Yeah,
I would have to agree with Bill on that.
I agree with you too.
You're not
Councilor
gonna
Colvin.
say, I think you'd save $10 a year on your taxes if you don't include ninth and third. That doesn't really make much sense.
I see what you mean.
I agree with Councilor Colvin.
Yeah, Bill, you got three of us, or
So
two of
could we
us on
put
each
that
side.
on the spring primary ballot then in May?
So this is raising taxes then, and I thought sentiment was not raising taxes.
No.
It's going before the voter.
Nobody said that. I think what several of us are saying is don't raise taxes without going to the voters.
Right.
This is going to the voters.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
But there was comment about doing anything of costing the, taxpayers or anybody more money. So
No, they have
What
to
about
make the
that?
decision. They have to make the decision, unfortunately.
Actually, my angst with that, Mayor, is that you continually, I say continually, that's not true.
Excuse me.
You repeatedly wanted to do something without going to the voter, and that's the problem. Going to the voter is, they're the boss.
So,
That's
well,
my
that's
angst
not,
with it.
I took it more as just anything, so.
No.
So,
And so also, if you're gonna go to the voters, it does take a campaign for this. Staff cannot do a campaign. Someone has to write up a voter's pamphlet statement. Somebody needs to pay for that voter's pamphlet statement. I'm not paying for that voter's pamphlet statement. I've done that before.
Well, I think the city's had several general obligation bonds go on the ballot, certainly before your time serving on council, so I think it's possible without your involvement. I don't know the procedures, I've never been involved in one, but
We could find
I
out.
don't think we're looking at some insurmountable task that can't be done.
And make it happen.
So we want to do this? Are we calling for a motion?
Can I throw something out there, just first, just to make, can I throw out an idea first, just to make sure that we're, so if council wants to go this direction, staff's on board, there's no doubt there's a need for it, and we'll pursue it vigorously and do whatever work we can do ahead of time to make sure information is available for the public to be fully informed. The only thing that I'd ask that you think about before maybe taking a vote is make sure that you feel that the timing is appropriate with when you might also be going out for the levy, making sure you're not worried about competition in that regard. And then if you have any thoughts on where you might be heading on again, really premature, you haven't seen any numbers yet or anything like that, but if you're eventually going to be considering a street utility as well, do you feel that this is strengthening or weakening your position in order to pursue that in the near term? And I don't say that to encourage or discourage, I just would like to make sure that we're not pushing this in a way that you end up regretting.
Very good
Stacy,
point.
what are the associated costs of $370,000? What does that mean?
I did talk to Gina Yeager about that, and there's cost just associated with hiring the bond counsel. I don't know, can't remember what else specifically, but it's like bond counsel.
It would be bond counsel and other costs associated with
I think there's
having their legal opinion about how to proceed.
And didn't we do street bond before for 10-year, not 20?
I looked at so the last successful bond that was in 1998, I believe that was a 20-year bond.
Was it 20?
Mhm.
It was 10 million for 20 years.
10 million for 20 years then? Mhm.
That was 34th?
It was 34th, it was Elm, Queen.
Salem.
Yep, Salem.
San Diego.
We squeezed out and got North Albany Road done with it. Yeah. Mhm. I just think this is not the right timing. We need to be putting our general fund services are at stake here, and I think this is just sort of kind of ignoring them and putting this up first, and I don't think it's enough streets to really be able to convince the taxpayer that that's worth it over reducing our general fund services.
I will admit that that's one question that I had also. I mean, they're odd streets. And so I'm thinking that too, you know, like if it were an area, kind of like we did Hill Street, you know, that's a very well-traveled one, stuff like that, you know, might go over better. And if we did 34th and Elm and those, that's a lot of street. But then it was what, 20 years ago too.
Yeah. So these aren't very much. Last time Waverly and 14th, it hasn't been that long since they were done, but those were with STIP funds. So we were able to get those state funds for those.
So, Your Honor, just going back to what you're saying, so to prioritize the needs, you're saying that the number one priority is the general fund?
I think general fund. I mean, we have got,
Okay.
we're looking at reducing police officers, firefighters coming up. We're being faced with losing other programs. Every department is having to take cuts. And I think if the council just says, well, let's see, we want to go to the voters for this street bond, that's looking like that's more of a priority than really focusing on our general fund services. And we mentioned at the budget time that we were wanting to deal with trying to be able to bring in more revenues, work on it, and I don't think this is right timing.
Okay, so just to continue with my question here then, so the second priority would be the safety levy?
Public safety levy to get renewed. I think we should, in my opinion, just go for a utility fee because then all tax exempt properties will pay for it.
Well,
So
okay, but
they're
then,
not paying into our public safety levy.
so then your third priority then would be the streets, the GO bond?
Would be a third, yeah.
Okay, so going back to the safety levy then, would you propose that that be on the ballot in the primary in May?
In May, and then we, as soon as we can, implement a utility fee to maintain our services.
So I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I guess the discussion then needs to focus on the safety levy and if we're going to increase the amount of it. We just kind of glossed over that tonight, but let's get serious about it if we are going to put it.
I think it's going to be difficult to want to raise it up and then still do a utility fee. I think that's going to be more pushback from folks. If we just keep safety levy status quo as a renewal, and then utility fee is going to be for general fund services, and then that would end up hitting the tax exempt properties that are out there. There's a lot of tax exempt properties that aren't.
I understand your position. You stated it very well several times. I just happen to disagree with you. I think that the voters will support an increased safety levy. They feel it's a priority, like Rich was saying earlier in the evening, and they know, or should know, it's unfunded. And I think you get down to brass tacks and tell them if you want to continue to fund public safety I shouldn't say the current level because we've had some cuts. But if you want to maintain the levels, that we had, we're gonna have to increase the safety levy.
And that's going to take a campaign to do that, because then you're going out for the voters and you need to explain to them that the reasons why you're asking for more money too.
Okay, so if we don't ask them for more money, it doesn't take a campaign?
It's not going to take very little for a campaign. You just want to do a voter's pamphlet statement, do your statement, with or star, and then staff we could probably be able to do an informational material on it, just so it's not advocating for it, just provides information.
I also think there's a value in the increase, not just to backfill some of the cuts, but also to kind of get a feel for the attitude or temperament, if you will, of the taxpayers. If they are willing to pay more taxes to support some of these services that they think are important. The reason I say that is, I think we got some feedback from the citizens on the gas tax. You can talk all day long that it wasn't a good campaign, it wasn't supported by everybody on council. They're all hypotheticals, because you don't know why people did or did not, vote for it. But increasing the safety levy, a minor amount, maybe it's just 10 cents, helps to backfill some of the cuts and also get a feel for how the taxpayers are feeling. Because that's going to tie directly into how we approach increasing other fees. And that would also give us an idea about how they feel about a general obligation bond. At some point, people are going to say, enough is enough. I'm not going to pay anymore. I don't care what cuts you have to make. And that's when things really kind of start to fall apart.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Peter, did you say if we raised it 20 cents, what would keep us with the public safety? Keep us pretty much, if we could fill the positions that we don't have now, that we're going to have to freeze or cut. Was it 20 cents that we would have to raise?
I think that the 10 cents was $350,000, so
Okay.
20 cents would be $700,000. And
That's-
that'd be about
The police, last time we spoke with Mario, it was like $1.2 million he would be needing for filling the positions he needs to fill next year. So, and then fire had a similar amount. So 750,000 would probably just cover part of the current need.
But what about compression then? How much of compression would come out of that?
Yeah, that's another layer.
Because we're lacking what, 500,000? This fiscal year from compression.
Yes, so I'm sorry, Hurry.
And then further states
Were you saying that it's
sample.
like that would be for the second year of the biennial, or would that cover the 2 years? Like, say if we did it now or in next year?
That gets back to the mayor's question at the beginning about when would that increase take effect?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, okay.
I don't think it would this biennium.
It doesn't fix it, because
Yeah.
they're having it frozen, they still have to train somebody, and that's 9 months
Yes.
knocked out of the year. So it means if you don't do something else quicker, it means we're going to lose positions.
Yeah.
So that's good information, on the chart, again, 10 cents on the public safety levy raises 350,000. You go down the next potential revenue source line, the utility fee that Sharon keeps talking about. It doesn't tell you the potential revenue. So do we know how much money would be generated per every dollar on the utility fee?
Well, we know there's about 19,000 accounts. So that's 19,000 by $1 by 12. And so for a $1 increase, that's
Well, let's just say 20 grand.
about 220,
240.
22,000.
So it's going to be $4 just for $1 million, right?
Yeah.
But it depends on how you're going to do your methodology. You could You could look at basing it on trip generation, vehicle trip generation per use. You could look at square area, as we did the stormwater fee. It just depends on what type of methodology you do. I think Corvallis, I believe, did trip generation on theirs. So
Well,
we
in
would have
terms-
to look on that.
In terms of simplicity,
Yeah.
to build the utility owner, property owner, it'd be $1 a month, $2 a month. You said $8 a month earlier tonight, didn't you?
Salem's looking at that.
So-
Philomath is 10.
I mean, that, I don't know what other methodology you could use other than just a flat fee that wouldn't be
Yeah.
extremely complex and burdensome upon city staff. But my point being is that to do the things that you want to do that you've mentioned tonight, you're probably realistically looking at $15 or $20 a month.
If you're looking at everything. and-
Well, you've mentioned parks and libraries and public safety.
And it could be.
And of course, the pitch that I made 2 months ago was street maintenance.
You could, it could all be structured with, a piece of it going for streets, it could be for public safety, it could be for, going into parks, library. It just depends. We just need staff to start being able to look at, pulling us some numbers to look at. Which route do we want to go?
Yeah,
Maybe
so-
it would be only public safety,
Yeah, that's
or
another-
you could even do streets, but we have to have something in front of us to look at what's that methodology going to be? And there's comparison from many other communities that have already done that methodology.
I'd kind of like to
Corvallis's
see
is 1750.
what Corvallis or Salem did, just to see if it's just one simple fee, or
Yeah, I
if
think
it's
that
a whole bunch of stuff.
What Jeff could speak, but the team is working on is various scenarios where we cover different ways of addressing it, because there is a relationship between making it fair or making it easy for the calculation. So if you make it, the fairer you make it, the more complex the calculation is gonna be. If you make it simple, just by water meter, for example, everybody gets the same, it's a less complex, easier. So the scenarios would include different approach on trying to come up with a number so the council has an opportunity to decide how to go forward with that.
You can't be easy.
Nailed
Yeah. So back with Stacy, what do you want to give for direction for Stacy?
I think we have to put it off.
Put it off? Okay. Is everyone, we're just holding off on?
I'm just trying to,
I don't think we want to put it on a ballot at the same time we have our safety levy.
and I don't disagree, Dick, but if the safety levy is a priority, let's make it a priority. It needs to be on the May ballot.
Yep, exactly.
And like I said earlier, we haven't had that discussion tonight. I don't think we should go home till we.
No, that's what we did kind of have, that's what I was saying when we talked about it, that's what staff is planning on. We'll have it on the May
We didn't
ballot.
argue about it.
So we do need to have the discussion if it's the same amount, which
Right.
Sharon's advocating for, or increase if I'm advocating for. And what's our timeline again? I know you said it earlier. and-
Right, so February 3rd is when we need you to give it, by then,
All right, so
give us direction.
we've got some time. All right.
Yeah, there's three things that Peter spoke about that we're going to be working on in terms of the revenue. One is the franchise fees. The portion that both Peter and Sean were talking about the indigent fund will be coming in as informational and potentially a resolution, and the public safety levy with potentially two resolutions, one with the 10 cents and one with the 20 cent. So the council has an opportunity to provide direction on those as well.
Okay.
Peter, I'm sorry. Can something be put in, like, the city bridges, or is that illegal? You know,
No,
like if we.
No, as a
if
matter
we-
of fact, that's part of that's going to be the topic for community conversation next, too.
Okay, because I was, trying to figure out, like, how we, we're 7 people, we're not gonna get out to the whole community or whatever,
Sure.
but I'm just wondering what we can use, what instruments can we use to get the word out if we go 20%, so that you can spell it out, just like we did with our fire and police stations, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing, this is why, you know, we cut this much, and so we need this to make it even. So city bridges and we can't put it on the website? Or can you? Can?
Before the ballot.
Okay. You guys just can't tell me.
Before we do
No,
a
we can touch it.
resolution.
We did that but last time with the public safety buildings.
Okay.
We prepared statements of what we were planning to build and how much it was going to cost, and ran that by the Secretary of State's office, and they said that was fine. They had us change a word here and there, and it stayed up through the entire election.
So it can be done without us doing, you know, all individual, you know,
Well,
along
no,
the streets.
when it comes time to vote, when there's election, we can't advocate.
Yeah.
So
But
that-
I think the last public safety levy, can't the spouses of the firemen and policemen advocate? They're not employees.
Right. The fire department, they help, on their personal time, they can help out, and police department have. So they've helped
So
out.
the employees can on their own time?
On their own time.
Oh.
Can Peter on his own time?
No,
Yeah, I don't know. He's gonna be married. It's probably not worth this.
No.
I don't think so.
City managers have their own code of ethics, you guys.
He's gonna have all those melon jobs.
They have their own.
Peter's a
code of ethics on city
24/7
managers,
hour employee.
ICMA.
My point is that
You can't.
there's a huge number of people out there that can advocate for this. All of the firemen and policemen on their own time, and then obviously their spouses in time, right?
But it's easier said than done, I do know.
Well, no, all I'm
Yeah.
addressing is that Bessie says there's only
Right.
7 of us.
Yeah.
There's
Right.
a lot more than 7 of us
Exactly.
that could potentially advocate.
Spouses are fine.
But running this campaign each time, I have had a lot of the police and, fire department staff get upset that it's like, why are they the ones having to go out and, do the campaign and help, and a lot of them contributing to the campaign when they figure it helps the overall general fund. So they would get upset because they weren't seeing other staff members out there within the city helping out, or like with parks or with library or even city manager's office or whatever. They figured, why is it all put on police and fire, because it's actually helping the overall
Yeah, but I
general
mean,
fund.
that's
So
life.
Well,
That's all I can
and maybe
say.
with
It's
current
just-
cuts, they've got a little different attitude.
No,
this
because
time.
it's us putting that on the ballot as a public safety levy. It could have been general fund levy. We've made the choice over the years to do public safety, but it puts the burden on staff as been the ones having to help with that campaign. I'm just relating to you what I have heard over the years, so from
Well, the
staff.
public
yeah.
safety's already taking 85% of the general fund, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, there's not much blood left in that turnip. So it only makes sense that you'd have a public safety levy to help support that.
I think we should go for a 20-cent increase and just get it done.
Okay. so-
Stacy, I don't think we're gonna do anything on
Yeah.
a street bond right
I don't
now.
think so
I
either
don't
right
think
now.
so.
Thank you for your patience.
But thank you, Stacy.
She's falling asleep over.
Okay, next item is fire department position reclassification.
Well, Shane walks up, I just want to clarify, the public safety levy is dedicated to public safety. It's not used for anything else.
Right.
Pardon me?
The public safety levy is dedicated to public safety only.
Right.
It's
Right,
not
it
used for
is.
anything else.
But
No.
it was always to help the general fund, because it's not other dollars coming out of
it is,
general
yeah.
fund to pay
Well,
for
No, I just want to
service.
clarify for folks that when we presented for the voters,
Yeah.
it's dedicated for public safety.
Yes, it
Right.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I understand, public safety is funded with 85% of the general fund plus the safety levy.
Correct.
Yeah, they
There you go.
can't really extract any more out of the general fund.
but they get 100% of property tax revenues
Yes.
too. Public safety does, yeah. So
Yeah.
because property taxes do not fully fund police and
General fund.
fire.
No.
Yeah. So, okay, chief.
All right. So hopefully this one is pretty simple.
Please.
30-second speech. What's happening is I'm taking the assistant chief's position and I'm lowering it to a division chief. And then I'm taking, or assistant chief position, lowering it to the newly created deputy chief's position. and then I'm elevating a division chief to a deputy chief. So I'm not changing the number of managers or number of chiefs in the organization. It's the same number. It's actually the same number as since 1990. All I'm doing is restructuring in order to provide more depth and provide two people some experience, the same experience that I got as assistant chief, coming, talking to all of you, and making administrative decisions. The other thing it does, which is a good thing, is it saves money for a few years. Probably about 3 or 4 years, though, into this, it's cost neutral, but we will be able to capture some savings here in the next 2 to 3 years. So you have a memo in front of you. Do you have any questions about it or anything I can answer?
Questions?
At this point, savings is a magic word.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, thank you.
Great cost
Thanks,
savings.
Chief.
So, yeah, so, and you don't need any action on this then, right? Okay, all right. Thank you, Chief. Okay, next, business from the council. Bessie, anything?
Nothing tonight.
Okay, and Bill?
No.
Dick? Okay, Rich? Alex?
I do have one thing. I'd appreciate it if somebody would go on our city Facebook site and put, turn your lights on, because with the weather right now, I'm seeing a lot of, I have a silver car. If you're going down Pacific and a silver car is coming towards without their lights on, you can't see them.
Yeah.
You know, and that could lead to accidents. And so a public safety notice saying, basically turn your lights on right now, because at 5 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning, I leave my house, my lights are on. But I'll be coming up by West Albany High School, where there's a lot of high school drivers, and I'll see cars with silver or gray cars. You cannot see them until they're right up on you. So I think it's a public safety issue, and I'm hoping the police and fire don't have to deal with crashes, because people are terrible drivers, especially when they don't turn their lights on, and they can't see in front of them.
I'm going to Laura put out a message tomorrow.
Thank you.
That'd
Thank
be
you.
great. Yeah, thank you.
No, that's.
Is that it, Alex?
That's it.
Okay, Mike?
You know, just thinking about that a little bit, maybe some outreach to the schools. I don't know who would do that, but, you know, schools can let their students know, hey, you need to turn your lights on.
Oh, these are adults too. I mean, I get
No,
the
I
kids.
understand, but you
Yeah.
mentioned around the school, so I'm
Right.
thinking the more people we
Can
can
see
get to
them.
get the message out, the
Right.
better.
Description.
You're all caught.
Okay, I didn't have anything, but to just give an early congratulations on the upcoming,
Yes.
wedding, and poor Peter has got to drive up to the Portland airport tonight, so we need to get executive session quick for him, and sorry that this is taken longer tonight. We've had a lot of chatter going, we've kind of really delayed you, but yeah, but no.
I used to have a ball and chain.
That script, just like this.
So,
Okay.
Norma renewed my contract on Saturday for the 34th time, so you're good.
I didn't get a script on that, but in other words, did you have anything? Nothing? Okay, staff have anything? So, okay. With that, we are to recess to executive session to discuss pending litigation or litigation likely to be filed in accordance with ORS 192.660-2H. And with that, if there's the news media here, which there is, we would just ask that nothing is reported unless